I fish with a lot of great fishermen.
Oh man, that is a good one. I was actually at a Lund catalog shoot, and Gary Roach was getting after it on the dock after crappies, and he was a madman. We were hanging out during the day and just shooting the bull, but Gary was out on the end of that dock, just angry at the crappies, just casting nonstop. And we didn't talk a ton of shop. We didn't talk about any groundbreaking crappie from dock secrets, but we caught crappies and we were just like little kids. And to me, that's at least my most memorable, and I know what an incredible stick he is, and I see why. It's because he just never stops. He'll fish as long as his body will allow him, and he won't quit no matter what. And I've never seen anybody that giddy to just do nothing but fish. It's just fun. It's a ton of fun to see.
You know, there's a lot of people. I would say, you know, one of the best fishermen from an education and teaching and selfishness standpoint would be Dave Gins, in the sense that, you know, a lot of things that he figured out. When he figured out something, I mean, he shared it immediately. There was no secrets. There was nothing where I wanted to keep this to myself so that I could catch more fish than you. I mean, he was just so gracious that way. There's a lot of great fishermen I fished with the Perch Patrol, you know, growing up. Dave Tronson, Jim Legacy, Zippy.
No, I fished with Al and Ron Linder for bass, and it was amazing to fish with them. I was trying to let Ron have the whole shot, and then an hour later I was fighting for my life because he was out casting me. And then I fished with Doug Stange, and then I fished with some great anglers of the year. I would say Al and Ron Linder because, Jim Linder. James Linder is one of the best anglers. I'd say all the Linders are great anglers.
The best fisherman that I personally fished with was a guy about 7 or 8 years ago. He got a hold of me and we went on a guide trip. It was just him and his son, right? This guy was a hammer. He was a straight up hammer. And I find out like 2 hours into this trip that he's actually not going to be with us very much longer. He's got terminal cancer. They've been fighting this for a very long time. They're going on a trip, him and his son, for like the last time. This guy spent so much time. I was just there. I'm the boat driver. I'm doing a job for them. This is a memory for them. He would catch a fish, talk to his kid about it, rinse and repeat. I'm positioning the boat so they are on point all the time, right? I watched that guy work all day. And that day, he got his 5.5 pound bass that he wanted. They wanted to do a trophy walleye after that. We actually got a 28 out of Mille Lacs. Super, super stoked about that. And I watched that guy all day. I didn't have to say, hey, when we're rigging, do this. Hey, do this. Hey, do this. I going in reverse to my tiller, and I got going 0.7, and he's like, hey, and I'm like, oh, he knows that, he knows I'm going 0.2 miles an hour a little bit too fast, just for 5 seconds. Like, he was probably the best fisherman I've ever fished with that didn't say much, didn't ask for much, appreciated absolutely everything, and I think he was probably a really good dad to his son.
Another person that probably impressed me is the Grizz. You know, it's amazing how he can sit on that bucket, and keep up with the guys that's got all the. He is using a Vexlar though. He hasn't. He had to go that far, but he doesn't have a. Especially for the sunfish, he's still got a stick that he's fishing with, and he's got the touch and technique. But he's 75 years old. He's been fishing his whole life. He knows what a bite is.
I guess we could go with styles, like the tight lining that we're talking about with the high vis and the short 20-inch sticks. The tight liners, there's a couple of those guys that took me under their wing and mentored me. One of the first guys to talk to me from that group, and the other guy isn't going to like me saying it, is Bud Fainer. He taught me about the Michigan rig with the fly tied in on a Palomar above the jig. And he was a tight liner too. And so he taught me how to tie that rig more than anything. He didn't really tell me much else. He was in like 03, 04, maybe somewhere around there in the ice guides back then, in the early ages of the tournament fishing. So he was one of them. And this guy, Dave Young, obviously he's renowned now for this tight lining style and for teaching guys all over.
And you know, he taught me things and he'd be like, I shouldn't have told you that. So you know you're getting good info when an old timer is giving you some stuff like that, where he's like, and then he calls me like on the way here today and he's like, you know, there's some stuff I ain't told you yet. But you're like, well, wait, what? Like, do I know? Are you sure I don't know? Like, are you sure you didn't forget telling me?
One of the guys that can refine a bite and narrow it down in ways that I've learned so much from is John Peterson. And whether it's bass or walleye, it doesn't make a difference. He can pick apart a body of water and refine it to what we need to do incredibly quickly. One of the best bass fishermen I've ever fished with is Jeff Gustafson. Gussie is an absolute animal. There are guys that can just smell fish, and he is definitely one of those guys. At the same token, there's other anglers over the year that are incredibly efficient. I don't know if it even is being with some anglers. I mean, there's Dean Capra from Minneapolis, and with the years that I was doing the Minnesota Pro-Am Bass Tour, just running those events and watching Dean fish, I learned an incredible amount because he's one of the most efficient people. He's a lot like Kevin Van Dam, but I've never spent time in relation to Kevin Van Dam like I did Dean Capra. And you watch how fast and efficient he can fish. It makes you a better fisherman by picking up those bits and pieces from what all these other anglers are doing.
Jig fishing, Mike McClellan, you know, of old, kind of was always the guy I looked to how did he jig, but Parsons and Christensen were right there with him. So, you know, trolling wise, Gary Gray who's not with us anymore, he used to be really good at trolling in a pack of boats and catch more than everybody else. So that, to me, he wasn't on different fish. He just knew different things and how to control his baits and like to use little chunks of worm on it and things like that. So he was a really good fisherman. I think just, you know, it's just so hard to say. I mean, if it was a live bait rig, I mean, it's hard to say I wouldn't pick a Roach. You know, he's fished more rigs than anybody else. I don't even fish him that much, but I like sitting next to him and watching him. I learned how to do a reeling hook set from him. So over the years, that's always been the cool thing about tournament fishing is, yeah, I'm fishing against the best guys in the world, but they're also right next to me, so I get to learn from them as I go. So, you know, I fished with a lot of great guys, and so I wouldn't say any one of them is, you know, by far the best. You know, I guess, you know, even all-time money winnings isn't. Sometimes it's just lucky that you won a big prize or whatever. So, a lot of good guys, a lot of good fishermen. Al's a good fisherman. I really like fishing with Al a lot, and I've actually been fishing with Ron down in saltwater too. So, a little bit different fishing with Ron, but he's a good fisherman too.
I had the opportunity to fish with Bob Propp Sr. a fair amount early in my career, and I think he was light years ahead of everybody in terms of fish location. I don't know anyone that could even hold a candle to him. And the way that he hunted for fish with his electronics and stuff was way, way futuristic. And it came from experience, but he was also, you know, and you couldn't pin him down. You couldn't say, Bob, why do you do this? Or why did you look here? You know, his answer would be, they're my pets. And so, from a standpoint of a guy who was really ahead of his time, and that probably never really did get the credit that he deserved, it was Bob Propp Sr. As far as one of the best overall anglers that I've ever fished with, it would be a toss-up between Rick Olson and Keith Gavias. Both of them are, you know, you don't hear the name Rick Olson very much in terms of that, but his skill level and fish finding capability is extraordinary. And to be real truthful, I'd have to put Dan Steer in with that crowd too. You know, I couldn't just pick one because I think overall they're very, very good anglers. And in today's world, Corey Springle would fit right in there, and Tom Kimos. And Jason Shakir.
Another person I have to mention is Paul Nelson, a guide in Bemidji. He truly understands everything about fish and doesn't seem to get the light of day and fame, but he's famous in my world. You know, there's a lot of, I call them wood ticks around, that are great anglers, and they win tournaments, and when they show up, you know they're going to be in the top.
Well, I mean, I hate to be prejudiced about it, but Al Linder probably was the best all-around fisherman I've ever fished with. He taught me a lot years ago. I know I've taught him some stuff too, you know, which a lot of it has to do with cadence too and how we fish a bait.
The one guy for me that sticks out the most, you know, for catching that taught me a lot, you know, because I was so hungry to learn when I was an 18-year-old kid, you know, was a buddy of mine named Kent Ward. And he was just a really, really phenomenal bass fisherman, really, really good at flipping and pitching and stuff like that. And that game I really didn't know much about, you know, 25 years ago, right? And just learning that flipping and pitching and skipping. You know, that's an art, that's a technique that he had a major impact teaching me as an angler. So I picked that up from him, right? And then he was also a very, very good steelhead fisherman, right? I was a good steelhead fisherman too. But not only was he a very good steelhead fisherman, he was a good bass fisherman, he was a good Great Lakes troller. So he was very, very good at a lot of different things. And for me, you know, I've learned a lot of different species, you know, from this guy, from walleyes, from this guy, but from that one guy that I started hanging out with, he probably single-handedly had the biggest impact on both of us fishing together. But really, you know, I learned the most, you know, from him. I have some of my good friends now that I fish with, I still learn a ton from, and that's why I fish with them, you know. You want to get good in this sport, you know, fish with some of the best people you can fish with. It's just like any other sport. You want to be a better tennis player or golfer? Golf with better golfers. Play against a better tennis player and you will get better. And, you know, that's the problem. A lot of us think we're so good, and, you know, us guys think, you know, hey man, you know, I don't need to get better. I'm already good at this and that. But man, I tell you what, you get to fish with, you know, I fish with so many different guys, you know, and I am always learning. The game is changing all the time. So get a chance to fish with someone who's really good, take it up, you know, and learn.
That's a tough question. I mean, there's so many different options. You get in a boat with somebody like a Captain Richard Stanizek, who specializes in offshore bill fishing, you know, particularly daytime swords. You got a mile of line out. I mean, how do you ignore that? Tremendous fisherman, but specialized fisherman. Then I've been in, you know, on the ice and in the boat with Dave Gens, and here's a guy that's really revolutionized ice fishing, and he's better than even people think he is. He's a great angler. Then you get in a boat with somebody like a Justin Lucas, who just won Bassmaster Angler of the Year, and you see the little things that they can do with a rod and reel that the average angler, even great anglers, can't do, like to flip a frog between a pontoon and a motor and have it go all the way to the front of the boat. It's inhuman techniques and abilities. But I think, you know, the best anglers are the ones that grow up fishing waters that move. I think the river fishermen and the reservoir fishermen are the ones that are used to finding and catching fish when others can't. I think that, and I'm one of them who grew up on natural lakes, we get used to some of the stable situations and we're looking for spots, not movement.
But then you think about walleye fishing, and I think about live bait rigging, and guys like Mark Christensen, who used to fish the walleye tour, but he guides on Leech Lake now. He's probably one of the best live bait fishermen that I've ever fished with. I'm trying to think of, when you talk about going ice fishing, I mean, my gosh, Brian Brosdahl, pan fishing, is an absolute animal. And he's one of those guys that has the ability to literally smell fish. Now, what makes him turn left and right sometimes when you're on a 50-yard stretch, I don't know. But he figures it out quicker than the rest of us.
You fish with people that have different styles to like pick up on that. And that's my opinion. That's how I do it. I like to get next to dudes that I don't know and make them uncomfortable to like learn. I want to learn their system is all it is, you know. But everybody has like unique little twists to it, and like how they hold their hand, their thumb. Like, does your thumb point up? Does your thumb point down? Like their grips are all very specific on how they do it. They all sit like this though, with the hole between the feet, and they fish like this. So either thumb up or thumb down or whatever, but they mostly draw circles. So they're trying to. The cadence is easy to mimic, but you're not doing this. You're using your forearm. You want it to be very consistent, so you try to use from the elbow out. That's kind of stuff those guys taught me. It was like just to be really a solid with your presentation, like to really hone in on what you're doing, what you're making the jig do. So sight fishing was, learning the sight fish after that was huge.
What's amazing is that all these great fishermen, they're all the same in the sense that they've tried a lot of things that didn't work. They tried a lot of places that they probably won't go back to anytime soon. they were students of their craft. And over time, you know, you just hear about the good and when they caught fish, but realize that the best of the best just spent a lot of time. They just had a passion where they weren't out there just for any type of recognition or any type of fame, or they just went fishing every chance they got. And they worked hard at it, and they figured out things, you know, and luckily for a lot of us, you know, a lot of those people were kind enough to share those things that took them a long time to figure out. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great fishermen here. Been blessed that way.